under the foundation for the last few years. And without further ado,
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa alamin wa salatu wa salam ala sayyidina Muhammadin ashraf al-anbiya wa sayyid al-mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khair. Barakallahu feek for having us, mashallah, in this auspicious program. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all the organizers who put this together and all that indeed were coming tonight, mashallah. Allah bless you all with Jannah Firdaus, inshallah, and give you a peaceful Hatem, good ending, inshallah, and give you the suffah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the akhirah, and inshallah gazing upon the noble comments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thank you and jazakumullah khair. Alhamdulillah, inshallah, the main topic of this whole talk, which is the khutbah today and the night program, was about solidifying our iman and talking about the challenges, the obstacles that we are facing today, and especially in the American context in the 21st century, and especially for our youth. So we're going to talk about response to modern day challenges. And primarily I was asked to talk about atheism, as well as talk about our creed and how important that is and what it's made of, and also the risk and dangers that atheism, secularism, there's a perennialism, we talked about the khutbah, relativism, a lot of isms, right? And we want to, inshallah, talk about some of these, debunk some of these, inshallah, and then clarify what our stance is as Muslims in them. Also, if we have time, I was asked to talk a little bit about evolution from an Islamic perspective. I'm not a scientist or anything, but, inshallah, we can approach it from Islamic creed. And then if there's time permitting, the problem of evil and suffering in the world, inshallah. So, alhamdulillah, to get into our aqidah first, because it's most importantly to talk about what is Islam before we say what Islam is not. And so, alhamdulillah, we have to deal with our aqidah first and foremost, learn that, understand that, and believe in it. And then we can talk about all the obstacles we face as a community. Now, it is true, though, atheism is a real problem. In fact, in Seattle, where I'm from, we are actually losing more of our youth than we are retaining them. More youth are going towards kufr, atheism, agnosticism, and so forth, than they are remaining Muslims, which is a huge problem. So this kind of far left, liberal, secular, atheistic, agnostic movement is, they call it one of the fastest growing religions in America, even though it's not actually a religion, right? But so many people are, quote unquote, converting. They're calling themselves nuns. Not like nuns like priests and nuns, but nuns as in like no religion. No religion at all, none. We have nothing to do with religion, nuns, right? So, alhamdulillah, this is something we have to face and head on in our communities and be able to empower ourselves with knowledge and the ability to learn our aqidah and then refute false aqidas or false beliefs and ideologies such as atheism, agnosticism, and so forth. Alhamdulillah, but it is something we need to know about. So, alhamdulillah, when we first talk about our aqidah from an Islamic perspective, we have to start with the hadith of Jibril alayhi salam. This is a sahih, authentic hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And for time's sake, I'm just going to read it in English, because it's a long hadith. He says, hadith of Jibril, Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, he says, we were sitting with the messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, one day when a man appeared with very white clothes and very black hair. There were no signs of travel on him and we did not recognize him. Like, how does this man show up without any traces of travel? With white robe and black hair and no dirt, no nothing. He sat down in front of the Prophet Muhammad and rested his knees by his knees and placed his hands on his thighs. Some scholars say that he placed his own hands on his own thighs and then he would knee to knee with the Prophet Muhammad like that, which means he was close to him. So like, who is this man that just shows up out of nowhere and is close to Rasulullah, something like that, where he could be knee to knee? One narration says he had his hands on the Prophet Muhammad's thighs, right? And his knees touching his knees. He sat down in front of the Prophet Muhammad and rested his knees by his knees and placed his hands on his thighs. The man said, "O Muhammad, tell me about Islam." Again, this is to teach everyone else around about Islam. He says the Prophet said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Islam is to testify there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, to establish prayer, to give charity, to fast the month of Ramadan, and to perform pilgrimage to the house if the way is possible. This is the 5 pillars of Islam. Okay? The man said, you have spoken truthfully. Well, he says, Sadaqah, you spoke truthfully. Well, who are you to say that as-sadiq means spoke truthfully? The trustworthy, the truthful, he was known by that before Islam, as well as after Islam. So who are you to say that he's telling the truth? So the Sahaba were shocked. So he says, we were surprised that he asked them and said he was truthful. He said, tell me about faith. Now this is Iman. So the first one was Islam. And we were talking about Sharia, Islamic law. So the 5 pillars are what's the outward of the Islamic law. And now we're talking about Iman, faith, which here is Aqidah, your creed, which has 6 articles as we'll see. The Prophet Muhammad said, faith is to believe in Allah. That's the first thing. And when we understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's important that we look at what the terminology the scholars have given to the name Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We must understand that the universal definition of al-ilah, the God, is that all things are dependent upon that all-powerful being, and that all-powerful being is not dependent on anything else. Okay? So we would say, of course, that's true for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we go further. We say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is uncreated, eternal, absolute, all-powerful, all knowledgeable, has no beginning, has no end. It completely depends on Allah, and Allah depends on nothing. Allah existed before creation, He will exist after creation. So when we look at it like this, we see the terminology which is called the mustalaha, that the ulama give to the name Allah. We say lafz jalala, but what is the name that the definition the scholars give? They say alam ala that. Okay, and wajib al wujud. It is the proper name for Allah. Allah. It's the name He gave Himself. In the Quran, it was what the Arabs called Him before Islam. They would say, oh, we worship Allah through the idols, but they would call Allah Allah. And it is a unique, special name He gave Himself that no one else has. Do you know anybody named Allah? No, not even the non-Muslims name their kids Allah. They know better than that. In fact, there was reported historically 2 cases of people who tried to name their kids Allah and both died. Yeah, don't name your child Allah. Not a good idea, right? In fact, in Islamic law, it's haram to name your child Allah or Ar-Rahman, Al-Rahman, Al-Rahman, the most merciful. Not Rahman, Al-Rahman. Okay? With the alif lam, because you're saying the most merciful. And Allah, the Sharia, those are the 2 names that are prohibited to name your children. You put Abd before it, or Emma, slave of Allah, Abdurrahman, Abdullah, that's sunnah, that's recommended. Okay, but just Allah or Rahman is haram. Okay, other names are halal, but some say makruh depending on what the name is. Like Al-Jabbar al-Mutakabbir, you know, the coercer, the one who does what he wills, you know, the highest one. Yeah, those are some that say are makruh. So this is the proper name that is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-wajib al-wujud, whose existence is necessary. One of the greatest proofs that Allah exists is your existence. In order for you to exist, Allah's existence is necessary because He created you. And so Allah's existence must be necessary for all that we see in creation to exist. Al-mustahiq li jamil kamalat wa munazzah an jamil naqais. He is worthy of all perfections and free of all deficiencies. Anything that indicates any type of deficiency or weakness from Allah, that's not Allah. Anything that is not completely and absolutely perfect in every way, okay, is for Allah. He's worthy of all perfections and void of all deficiencies, whose existence is necessary, and the name Allah is a proper noun that is given to the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the hadith continues. He says, you have spoken, he says, tell me about faith. The Prophet says that you have faith to believe in Allah, His angels, His books, His messengers, the last day, and to believe in providence. You know, the decree of Allah, its good and its harm, all from Allah. The man said, you have spoken truthfully. He then says, tell me about ihsan. So now we have the spiritual excellency tradition in Islam. Where does that come from? This idea of ihsan. Some will say this is the haqiqah. So if Iman was aqidah, Islamic creed, and Islam here not meaning the religion of Islam, Deen of Islam, that it's under the umbrella of the Deen of Islam. Islam here means Sharia. But then what does ihsan mean? Ihsan is the haqiqah, the reality of faith. This is tazkiyah, spiritual purification. And so he says, tell me about ihsan. He says, أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه إن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك. It is that you worship Allah as if you see Him, and if you do not see Him, know that He sees you. Allah sees and knows everything. You cannot hide anything from Allah. He knows even your innermost secrets that nobody else knows. يعلم السر وما يخفى. You know what that means? The sir is a secret that only you know and no one else knows. وما يخفى. The yakhfa is even what's more subtle than the secret. It's something within you that you don't even know about yourself. Allah even knows that. Sees everything, hears everything, knows everything, including all your intentions, even your thoughts. Even though you don't act upon them, Allah knows your thoughts. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is we have to be conscious and aware and worship Him as if we see Him. In everything we do as a Muslim 24/7 full-time job. Always everything we do should see Allah in that, or do it for Allah's sake. And if we don't see Allah, the signs of Allah, then no, at least He sees you. Have enough hayat. Have enough shyness or shame that knowing Allah sees you, so be careful for what you do. Right? So this is ihsan, which is the spiritual path of spiritual purification, inshallah, to reach this high level of spiritual excellency. He then says, the man said, tell me about the final hour. The Prophet ﷺ said, the one asked does not know more than the one asking. Some scholars say that they both didn't know, which is the downward position. He says, tell me about the hour. When is the hour? The day of judgment. And he says the one asking doesn't know more than the one being asked. Like, I don't know and you don't know. Okay, so nobody knows. Some of them might say they both knew. Right? So in other words, we both know, but the Prophet doesn't want to tell us how around them so people can bank on that. Oh, when? Oh, really? Okay, I'll just wait till then. There we go. Day of judgment is 100 years from now. I guess I can do what I want. Or, you know what? It's tomorrow. Oh my gosh, I gotta do something. I better get active. Right? So it was hidden for a reason. And we don't know if they knew or if they did not know. But the man, he says, the Prophet says, the one asked does not know more than the one asking, in that we both know or we both do not know. The man said, tell me about a sign. The Prophet Muhammad says, a servant girl will give birth to her mistress, and you will see a barefoot, naked, and dependent shepherds complete in the construction of tall buildings. The interpretation is like the slave girl or the servant girl will give birth to her master, meaning that was a literal thing, that during that time that she was going to give birth to her master. In other words, like she grows up and frees her own mother, who was a servant or slave at that time. And some say it's actually more metaphorical in that, children nowadays, and we see this all over, can be so disrespectful to their parents that they act as if they're the parents and their parent is the child, as if they're the master of their own parents, right? So here it's like treating your parents like the parents are the slaves and you are the master. And this is obviously something that is prohibited in our religion. We should have respect and kindness to our parents. And the other one is you see barefoot, naked people and dependent shepherds complete constructions of tall buildings. Anybody see that today? Right? Places that were like, barren deserts, struck oil or whatever, and overnight became a huge populous, rich city. And now people in the Arab world and other places are competing about who can build the tallest building. And it's going back and forth, is it the Emirates, is it Malaysia, where is it? Who's going to build the highest, tallest building in the world, right? So that's one of the signs of the day of judgment, which we see happening. He says, then the man returned and I remained. The Prophet said to me, Sallallahu or Umar, do you know who that was? I asked, Allah and His Messenger know best. The Prophet Muhammad said, verily he was Jibreel who came to teach you a religion. So that was Jibreel in the form of a man who came to teach you your entire religion, all in a nutshell of this hadith of Jibreel, which is in Sahih Muslim. It's an authentic hadith that we know in the one of the most authentic hadith literature of Sahih Muslim after Sahih Bukhari. Okay, so one of the things about Aqidah, Islamic creed, is it is the most important science in Islam. How many people know Aqidah? How many people study it? It's more important than tafsir. It's more important than hadith. It's more important than fiqh. It's more important than nahu, grammar, jurisprudence, hadith literature, exegesis of the Quran. Why is it more important? Because it has to do with Allah. It has to do with Allah's speech, and thus, because it has to do with Allah, it is the most superior and the highest form of knowledge. So, if it is sound, everything else will sound, because Aqidah is the ocean, and every other science is the river that flows out of the ocean. It was a reality before it was named science, so the Prophet Muhammad did not sit around and say, hey, let's study Aqidah to the Sahaba. It was a reality that existed as a knowledge, as a science, and then it gets coined later on. The term Aqidah comes later on in Islamic history, which we said has 3 integrals. Deen of Islam, we said Iman, 6 articles, Islam, Sharia, which is 5 pillars, and Ihsan, which is Tazkiyah, spiritual purification, which is 1 article. So it's a 3-dimensional deen, complete, balanced, inward and outward religion. Islam has 3 components in our creed, and it is something that makes our entire religion balanced. It makes it something that is, complement each other, and it makes it so that it is a 3-dimensional religion. We don't want to have just 1 dimension. It's not just outward Sharia, letter of the law, nor is it just the spirit. It's the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. It's not just, do outward actions without inner spiritual reality of purifying the heart. Removing the heart from the diseases, like what? Arrogance, envy, and ostentation, showing off, and hatred, and greed. Trying to remove the vices of the heart. This is called takhali, removal. And if you remove it, then you can adorn the heart with praiseworthy attributes, and this is called tahalli, where now you're trying to inculcate love, mercy, generosity, kindness into your heart. This is the process of tazkiyah, of the nafs, purification of the soul, which is that 3rd dimension. Imagine you have a cup filled with water, like this one, and you want to fill it with something. You can't fill it with something else until you first empty what's in it. Well, if there's like oil, grime, and dirt inside of this, like our hearts are, then you got to clean that and pour that out before you can then put sweet honey. Right? So think about it like that. So what does Aqidah mean? It comes from Aqada. Is a what? You may know. It's a contract, right? And we know that a contract in Islamic law usually has what? Ijab and qabul. Ijab is a proposal. Qabul is an acceptance. I want to buy this for that. Okay, I will sell it to you for this. I'll buy it for that. There's a proposal. I marry my daughter to you. I accept marrying her. Okay, there's a proposal and there's an acceptance. This is which is a contract. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu awfu bil uqud. Oh, you who believe, fulfill your covenants. It's important as Muslims that we fulfill our promises and our agreements that we agree to. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this, and then the Sharia also, by the way, it comes from the word uqda. Anybody know what uqda is? Not. Yeah, wahdul uqdatan min lisani, right? With Harun, the brother of Musa alayhi salam, and remove the impediment in my tongue. This is uqda. Because the idea of aqidah, if you have strong, unshakable faith in Allah, in His Messenger, in the Quran and the Sunnah, that is like a tied knot that cannot be undone. That's how firm your iman is. So uqda is another name, and then in Islamic law, the definition of aqidah is this: a science that enables a person to affirm religious creed on the basis of absolute proofs. So if you can affirm your religious creed and then you use absolute proof, like the Quran in Arabic and the mutawatir hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so then the question comes: how do we explain Islam logically? Or the existence of Allah rationally, and especially to, let's say, a non-Muslim. Because here's the circular argument. Hey, Islam is the truth, like we said in the khutbah today. The Quran is the truth. Okay, who said that? Oh, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said that was divine revelation, wahi from Allah. Who said he was a prophet? Allah did. Where did Allah say that? In the Quran. Who said it was the Quran? The revealed word of God, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Who said he was a prophet? Allah, right? Again, round and round we go. If they don't believe in Allah and His Messenger, the Quran and Sunnah, how are we going to convince them? Yeah, this is the truth. Look, Allah said. He doesn't believe in Allah. She doesn't believe in Allah. So how do you then convince that person or try to make an argument towards that person? No, let's go into that. So the first thing is we have to establish and understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is absolutely and completely dissimilar to creation. So there's the creator and there's everything else is the creation. Allah is nothing like, in any shape, way, or form, His creation. And why that's important in Islam is because every other religion try to make Allah similar to creation. You go all the way back to the Greeks, with Zeus and Thor in Greek mythology. They made all their gods lowercase, super beings, like Marvel, Marvel superheroes. That's kind of how they made all of them. Then you see like what the Buddhists, some of the Buddhists, and making it like a statue, with big belly named Buddha, right? Or you can see some have made it like an animal, a cow, it's divine. Or some have made it Jesus, alayhi salam. Isa alayhi salam, they say is God or son of God or part of the Trinity. Right? And so you have this situation where it's idols, rocks and stones. You guys know the story of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu? He's the second Khalifa in Islam after Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. He's the one who the Prophet Muhammad says in a Sahih hadith, if there was a prophet after me, it would be Umar. Do you know, Umar said, there was two things I did in my past. Now again, you got to take context. This is before he was. Two things I did, one made me cry and one made me laugh. And they said, well, what made you cry? And he said, well, and again, this is obviously was prohibited in Islam and before he became Muslim, but it shows you how even Umar, somebody like Umar can have hope to become Muslim and become one of the greatest Muslims and would be a prophet if, after the Prophet, if there was one, it would have been Umar, but there wasn't one. He says that in those days, in Jahiliyyah, he buried his daughter alive, which is haram. And when he was doing that, she was rubbing the dirt off of his robe while he was burying her alive. And he said that, remembering that, even now, remembering that makes me cry. And obviously he made Tawbah and became Muslim later. He said, the thing that made me laugh is I made an idol out of dates, right? Made an idol out of dates. And then I went on a trip, travel. And I got hungry on my trip, so I ate my idol. Imagine that. What happened to that God you worship? Well, in my stomach now. I ate him. He's being digested. Okay, well, when's he going back coming out? That's the big guy. That's bad. This is the big question, right? So how could that be your God? How could you worship that idol made of dates that you just ate? Rocks and stones, right? So this is the thing, is people will make anything God if their God is not Allah. My teacher in Yemen, he would say, "Man la ya'bud Allah ikhtiyar, abida khalq dururatan." Whoever does not worship Allah out of free choice will end up worshiping creation out of necessity. If you do not worship the one and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will worship something else. Whether it's celebrity culture, whether it's science, whether it's football stars or athletes or singers or dancers or ideologies, whatever it may be, your boss, your professor, your job, money, your house, your car, whatever, you will end up following something. If you're going to follow something, why don't you follow Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Everybody follows and reports to someone. Why not Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam? If you're going to worship anything, why not worship Allah? He is most worthy of your worship and your praise. So, in this sense, we understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mukhalafatil hawadith, is an attribute of Allah which is eternal, subsists with His essence, has no beginning and no end, and that is that He is dissimilar to His creation. Why is that? Allah is uncreated, He's infinite, He is eternal, and not contingent, dependent on anything in finite temporal creation. So one thing like this, you cannot fit the eternal in the temporal, the infinite and the finite. Imagine I had so if you have, like, say, for example, a small box, right? Small finite temporal box. Now imagine you had a gigantic box. Let's say, hypothetically, it's eternal and it has actually no end and it goes out forever. You try to fit that box in a small box. Something that is eternal, absolute, unlimited, unrestricted, cannot fit within something limited, temporal, and finite. Thus, Allah cannot exist inside His creation or within His creation or contingent on His creation. He doesn't need anything in creation. He existed before there was a creation. He will exist after creation, and He needs nothing to do with creation. كان الله ولا شيء معه. The Prophet Muhammad says Allah was and nothing was with him. And then he creates creation. And he didn't have to create creation. Remember, brothers and sisters, it is not Allah who needs us. It is not Islam who needs us. The Prophet Muhammad doesn't need us. We need Allah. We need Islam. We need to follow Rasulullah. It is us who are in need, not Allah. And who said that? Allah. Ya ayyuhan nas. Ya ayyuhan nas. Oh people, Muslims, non-Muslims, everyone, all of you. Antum al-fuqara ilallah. You are the ones who are poor. Fuqara can mean like poor, impoverished, in need of Allah's mercy. You're the ones dependent upon me. I am not dependent on you. Antum al-fuqara ilallah. Right? Ya ayyuhan nas. Antum al-fuqara ilallah. Wallahu ghaniyyun hamid. And Allah is free of all things, worthy of all praise. And what's the next one? In yasha yudhibukum. وَيَأْتِي بِخَلْقٍ جَدِيدٍ. In yasha, if he wants to, he can get rid of all of you. In yasha yudhibukum وَيَأْتِي بِخَلْقٍ جَدِيدٍ. He'll bring a new creation. Those who love him, those who worship him, those who ask him for forgiveness, those who follow his book. He'll bring somebody else. He'll replace us with someone else who will do it if we don't do it. What's your role? What's your position in this? What are we doing? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes that very clear, and he says, وَمَا ذَلِكَ عَلَى اللَّهِ بِعَزِيزٍ. And that's not difficult for Allah. That's easy for Allah. You think that's hard? Who created you in the first place? Huh? Same one can create you, can destroy you and create you again, or create somebody else again. Right? So, alhamdulillah, this is how we can understand that. Can't fit a big box in a small box, and our intellect cannot fathom this. That's why they say, for example, how can the limited, finite, temporal, created intellect fathom and comprehend the unlimited, absolute, uncreated, eternal creator? Who created the intellect? And somebody says, where's Allah? Where's your nest? Where's Allah? Where's your nest? You know you have a nest. Lower self, the ego, it's inside of you. Everybody has it. Where is it? What shape is it? What color is it? What does it look like? But you don't know. You don't know. How can you tell me where the creator of your nest is and what he looks like and what he did? You don't know the realities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's exactly the point, is not knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is knowing Allah better. And who said that? Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, he says that he says that in a line of poetry, it's very beautiful in Arabic. The inability for you to understand Allah is understanding Allah. Once you come to the conclusion, I don't know Allah, you're starting to know Allah better. Because nobody can fully understand the reality of our Creator except our Creator. And the one in creation who knows him better than anyone is his most beloved, Habibur Rahman, the most beloved of the most merciful, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nobody knows him better than him in creation. But not even he knows him like Allah knows himself. And that's another statement of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. La ya'rif Allah illallah. Nobody truly knows Allah except that. Right? So subhanallah. What was the problem of previous nations, peoples, religions? What was the problem? Everybody wants to pinpoint Allah. I want to touch, feel, understand Allah on a personal human level. So you know what that led to? Making creation Allah. Something I can touch, feel, and know. Something I can test in a laboratory. Something physical, tangible to me. And if I don't understand that, then there is no God, or that's not my God. So when you want to make Allah, if you want to make Allah personable, physical, tangible, something you can touch, feel, then you will end up making Allah like creation. That's exactly what some of the Christians did by making Jesus, God incarnate on earth. That is exactly what some of the other religions have done, whether it's animals or whether it's stones or whatever it may be. It is making Allah creation. And so we say off the bat, Allah is completely and absolutely dissimilar in all ways to creation. And if you want a methyl, anybody know what a methyl is? A methyl in Arabic is a example, a proverb, right? Proverb, methyl, okay? You can say example as well. If you want a proverb and you want to memorize this in Arabic, if not in English, the scholars, they say, ready? Anything that crosses your mind of what you may think Allah is other than that. Guys, the limit. Bismillah. You want it? I think Allah looks like that. Whatever you can come up with from your creative imagination is going to ultimately be creation. You're going to take parts of this, that, the other thing, and ultimately it's creation. Because it's coming from a creative mind. So anything you think of what Allah is, Allah is other than that. If the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he tries to explain paradise, right? Paradise, Jannah. He says about it what? La ayn ra'at, wa la udhunun sami'at, wa la khatar ala qalbi bashar. No eye has seen the realities of Jannah. In fact, the only similarity between something in this world and in Jannah is the name. That's the only reality. So you guys know the word for apple in Arabic? Tufah, right? The name for apple in Arabic, and the name of apple in Jannah is also tufah because the language of Jannah is Arabic. If you don't know it, learn it now, but you will be taught it in Jannah. Yes, you will automatically learn it. If you enter Jannah, inshallah, you'll know Arabic. But it's better to learn it first than the dunya if you can, right? So the word tufah and the dunya is a word tufah in Jannah, but there is no other reality between the two, except that name. The tufah and Jannah, when you take a bite, you take another one is 70 times greater than the last bite. And that goes on for eternity. Do you know if you take a bite in this dunya, and you take another bite, and then you're going, oh man, I'm full, I don't want to even finish that one. You know those like really big ones, gigantic ones? Probably not organic. The Miracle Grow ones, you know? You're like, man, is that a pumpkin? No, that's an apple. Like, whoa, and it's bright red, no marks, no nothing, right? Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, he says, he said he had a conversation with his dad. He said, he said, you eat these organic ones, and these organic ones, they have like worms and stuff, bugs in them. But these non-organic ones, they use fertilizer, Miracle-Gro, all this stuff, don't have any of these things in it. He said, I wouldn't eat an apple a worm wouldn't eat. Right? Why would I? Like when I was in Yemen, it wasn't like, oh, hey, let's go look for free-range, cage-free, non-organic, organic, halal, fair trade chicken. No, it's just a chicken. That is the local chicken. And they're small because that's what a chicken actually looks like. Not like the steroid buffed up chickens, that are actually not chickens, They don't even have a beak and no wings. It's crazy, right? What we're eating nowadays. So, Yani, my point in all this is he says, no eye has seen and no ear has heard. Now, why does he go in that order? And no heart has imagined. Why is that orderly? Because your sight is limited, right? You can see what's in front of you, but you can't see what's behind you. Your hearing is more vast than your vision. You can hear what's in front of you, you can hear on the side, you can hear behind you, right? And more vast than your hearing is what? Your imagination. Your heart can imagine more than what you can hear with your ears. You can imagine things in different worlds. You can imagine different planets. You can imagine, you're there, you're here. You can imagine you're flying in the air. You can imagine a lot of things. Right? So look at the process. He says, no eye has seen, and even more than that, no ear has heard, and even more than that, no heart has even imagined. If that's Jannah, then what about the creator of Jannah? Anybody think about that? If that's Jannah, what about the creator of Jannah? So Allah existed before everything. He's Al-Qadim. Al-Qadim means the pre-eternal, the one who existed before everything else. And he is Al-Baqi, the everlasting, the one that will remain and last after everything else is gone. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about that in the Quran. He says what? He is the first, he is the last, okay, he is the manifest, and he is the hidden. This is who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes, meaning nothing before him, nothing after him. And he is the one that knows everything manifest and everything hidden. SubhanAllah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not change. Why doesn't he change? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Allah. Allah doesn't change like we change. Why? Because change is an attribute of creation, because change means something weakens. Right? You start off as a helpless, dependent baby. Right? Your parents are changing your diapers. feeding you, taking care of you. You can't do anything, right? Always remember your parents before that. They did that to you. So what happens when they need diapers and they can't do anything? Huh? You gotta return the favor. Huh? So you started out as a helpless child, and then you got strong and became, mature, healthy, strong, and all this, and then you become weak, decrepit, decay, and die. That is a cycle of life. That is change. Because if something changes, then it's a sign of it weakens, it decays, and then it eventually dies. Allah is al-Hayyul Qayyum. He is the all-living, the sustaining, and He never dies. Right? He is free from all need, material parts, space, place, time. Allah doesn't need space, time, place, direction, sky, Jannah, throne. Even the Prophet Muhammad, he doesn't need any of this because this is all creation and He's free of all creation. And He's not dependent on anything in creation. And all creation and Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Qadir. You know what al-Qadir means? In the law of Qadir, Allah is all powerful over everything. It means the omniscient. Or the omnipotent. The omnipotent is the all-powerful one. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just if you want something, He says what? Kun fayakun. Be and it is. Allah wants creation to exist. Be and it is. Do you ever see like that YouTube video where like it shows somebody, on Earth, like a desert or beach or something, and then it zooms out, and then it goes to like the next largest planet, then the next largest planet, then the next largest. I mean, it's like over and over. You're like, oh my God, I'm nothing. Like a speck of sand in the Sahara Desert. I am insignificant and minute compared to the greater universe. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being al-Qadir, He just says all this stuff, everything you see, kun fayakun, be and it is, and it's done. They say al-Kawn, you know what the Kawn is? Kawn is the universe. Al-Kawn ma bayna kaf wa noon fi kun fayakun. The universe is between the kaf and the noon of kun fayakun. And that's al-Kawn, right? It comes from the same root word. He is also al-Alim, which is omniscient, the one who's all knowledgeable. Okay, so look at the atheism argument, going back to this. Okay, when we understand our own creed, our own deen, we have to look at what other people are saying. We're trying to reject, deny our aqidah, our creed, and our belief, and are trying to call us to their way. So what do they say? There is no God because He cannot be seen or tested. That's the atheist argument. And remember, there's agnostics. Agnostics are those who believe in God, but they don't believe in organized religion. So they don't follow Islam or Christianity or Judaism. There's no organized religion they follow, but they just believe in God, if God can be proven in some cases. Okay, so both of them are, it's kufr, both of them are kufr, right? And it is our aqidah that those who die on La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, who live that and die on that, that they will eventually be in heaven, in Jannah for eternity. And those who reject and deny La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah and die on kufr, that they will be in hellfire for eternity. That is our aqidah and our belief, because who said so? Allah said so in the Quran, and the Prophet Muhammad in the Sunnah. We are not ones to know or judge. That's up to Allah. He's the one that has the keys to heaven and hell, not us. Right? We don't judge and determine. Only Allah knows and does that. But that is part of our belief. So, is that right? Because He cannot be seen and tested, then thus God must not exist. Okay. Well, how do I know that you're real? Huh? How do I know you're real? So I'm sitting across from me. How do I know you're real? I'm here. I exist. Look, you can see me. You can touch me. You can feel me. I'm here. Well, I mean, how do I know it's not a dream? How do I know it's not the Matrix? Like, maybe this is like some kind of computer simulation. You ever played The Sims? You know the Sims game? Kids know the Sims game? How do I know there's not like some Sim game? Right? Well, no, because you could, well, how do I know? Well, because you believe. You have to believe that I'm here, that this is real, that you can see me. So I have to believe. I believe in Allah. I don't have to touch and feel and see Allah to believe in. And get this, brothers and sisters, if you believe in the unseen, Allah will reward you with seeing the unseen in Jannah. What's the greatest pleasure and blessing in Jannah? Seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second one is seeing Rasulullah. Okay? Seeing the Prophet Muhammad and having his murafaqa, his suhbah, is the second greatest pleasure in Jannah after the first, which is what? Is seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Jannah. If you believe in Him now, even though you can't see Him, but you can feel, you can experience, but you can't see Allah, then you'll be rewarded with that. If you die on that, we're seeing Allah in Jannah. Okay? So that's something that is really important. You guys know, by the way, some people don't know this, but what's the worst punishment in hellfire? Anybody know? The worst punishment in hellfire. Huh? Exactly. Oh, mashallah. Well, yeah, usually people don't get that. So some people say, oh, it's the fire. Oh, it's the when it's like completely black and you can't see anything. Some people think it's like there's actually a part like a cool fire, like it's very cold, like the dry ice, feeling. Some people think it's like the shazatu sahum, or some think it's like the hamim, something it's like the boiling water, the poison in the tree. Some people have all these ideas, but actually the worst punishment in hellfire is being deprived of seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it's the opposite of the greatest pleasure. The amount of regret and remorse and sadness for not seeing Allah because one did not make it to Jannah is the greatest form of punishment. Worse than any of the burning and anything. So if we understand this, then it's because we have faith. We believe in Allah, even though we don't see Him, and I may see you now, but how do I know I'm not imagining it? Or how do I know it's not an illusion? Or how do I know it's not a dream? I have to believe that you're real. And I believe Allah is real, even though I don't see Him. Right. So then we say, you flip it. What's the default proof? Let's flip it. Muslims should not be afraid or ashamed of their religion. They should be proud, and don't be afraid to flip their logic, their arguments, and use it against them. The default proof for all of civilization and all of history of humanity is that God exists. Different forms and representations and manifestations of God, but the default is God exists. You prove to me God doesn't exist. And He won't be able to prove to you that God does not exist. Show me that God doesn't exist. Well, I want to see it, test it, everything. You won't be able to show you, or she won't be able to show you that God exists, that does not exist. And you may not be able to prove to that person that God does exist because it's a religious experience. You have to feel this, you have to know this, you have to experience this because guidance is from Allah alone and not from us. Allah turns the hearts. And there's a hadith that's metaphorical. The hearts are between the two metaphorical fingers of Allah, and He turns them however He wants. He guides who He wills, He misguides who He wills. That's up to Allah. It's not up to us. We have to give da'wah. That's our duty. That's our responsibility to call and invite to Islam, but we don't guide anyone. Right? Even the Prophet was told, you do not guide the ones who you love, however, Allah guides whoever He loves. And that was in reference to Abu Lahab. So this is how we understand it in terms of the default proof, and then you can say, well, what do you have to lose? All right, let's look at that. I can't prove to you Allah exists. You can't prove to me Allah does not exist, but the default is that He does exist. So prove to me He doesn't. You can't do that. Okay, fine. I can't do that too because you haven't experienced God. Okay, fine. Okay, what have I lost? What have you lost? What have I gained? What have you gained? Let's look at the argument. Okay, if you're right, let's say you're right. Hypothetical, big hypothetical. You're right, I'm wrong. As you say, God doesn't exist. Islam is not real. It's not true. Okay, that's your belief. Okay. So then what have I done? I've just lived a good, moral, halal Muslim life. Done good deeds, right? Try to be good, have good character, serve the community, help my neighbors, be respectful with my parents, try to give out charity, help other people. Okay. What have I done wrong? What I fasted? I prayed without to do with anybody. What? I went on a Hajj? Okay. What? I paid zakat? Okay. Right. What have I done? What have I lost? Nothing. You just lost it. You lived a good, tranquil, peaceful Muslim life. Okay. And there's no okay. It's like lights out. They think you're like flies, or you're born, you eat, you drink, you make, you create more flies, and you die. That's your life. Lights out. That's it. Nothing after that. Okay. All right. That's if you're right. I have gained a good life in this life, and I have not lost anything in the next one. If you're right. But if I'm right, and there is an akhirah, and there is a God, and there is a hellfire, and there's a heaven, and I'm right, you've lost the dunya, and you've lost the akhirah. You've lost and lost. I've won and won. You've lost and you've lost. And I win the akhirah, I win Jannah, you lose Jannah, that's hellfire, if Allah wills, and you live whatever immoral, unethical life as an atheist in this life. Yes. So again, loss versus win-win. So we look at this and we say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this proof, we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they'll say, for example, this is who we understand as God. And so we first have to understand what the definition is of what they mean to be Allah, because whoever defines the term, they are the ones that define the discourse. And definitions are half of knowledge, as scholars say. We have to come to common understanding. And when you kind of say, well, who is God to you? That's what you need to ask. And they'll say, oh, this man in the sky who looks down on you and judges you. Okay, that's not the God I believe in. I believe God is nothing like creation. And I don't believe God depends on his sky or his throne or needs it or is in it or anything. Okay, so then what? So I then disbelieve in the understanding of your lowercase God. Your understanding of your lowercase God, of something that's not what I believe in, who is Allah, I also disbelieve in that, and you disbelieve in that. Okay, but I believe in this Allah and how I understand Allah. So sometimes there's a commonality in that, and that the way you understand Allah is not the same way that I understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as Muslims, we have to be very cautious not to allow them to impose their standards on us. So in this sense, what is it, that they cannot answer? So the science, we say, is a new religion of atheists that is always changing and created by Allah. Science is changing 1 minute to the next, and science itself is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is important to note that, initially Einstein believed that what? Matter was not increasing, that matter was stagnant. Some decades later, they proved scientifically that matter is increasing in the universe, which is the belief now. Now there's like dark matter, and matter is increasing and expanding, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he talks about this in the Quran, about the expansion of the heavens and the earth. وَإِنَّ لَهُ لَمُوسِعُونَ. Indeed, we are ever expanding the universe. So who are you going to believe? What Allah said 1400 plus years ago in the Quran, when he says he's expanding the universe, or you just happen to be born in the time of Einstein, who was supposed to be one of the greatest scientists on earth, who said the universe is stagnant and no matter is increasing. You're going to believe that now because science said so, because Einstein said so, and then he was disproved, science changed, and later on they discovered that matter is always increasing. Well, guess what? Allah told us that before, so it's not new to us Muslims. Okay? So what they can't answer is, why are we here? And where did we come from? And where are we going? Science cannot answer that question. Professors cannot answer that question. There's a class that they teach in Seattle, which is interesting. God is dead. That's what the professor on the first day of class, he comes, I don't know what the actual title of the class is, but on the first day of class, he says, God is dead, and I'm going to spend the rest of this quarter proving and convincing you that God is dead. I was like, subhanAllah, you can't have a college credited course that people actually pay for, saying God is alive. Can you imagine that? Oh yes, we have this beautiful university class called God is alive. And I'm going to spend the whole quarter proving you that Allah exists and that he is one, and that he's alive. You would be like expelled or whatever, kicked out because you're proselytizing. You're trying to promote your religion. Okay, but saying God is dead is not a problem. So we have an issue with that, and they can't answer the questions Allah answers in the Quran. Why are you here? Tell me, science, why are you here? Where did you come from? Where are you going? What does Allah say about that? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Truly we belong to Allah, and truly to him we shall return. Kama bada'nakum awwala marra nu'idu. As we had created you the first time, we'll return you back in resurrection. We'll create you a second time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, you could think that we created you for play. Did we create you utterly uselessly? Do you think we created you for play and that you will not return back to us? So we know we were created by Allah, from Allah. We know we're going back to Allah. And then why did Allah create us and put us on this earth? Why are we here, brothers and sisters? What are we doing here? One verse in the Quran. Allah answers it. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ. I have not created human beings or jinn beings except to worship me. إِلَّا لِيَعْفُرُونَ. Ibn Abbas says, إِلَّا لِيَعْرَفُونَ, or إِلَّا لِيَعْلَمُونَ, except to know Allah subhanahu. We were created to know Allah, to worship Allah, to serve Allah, to obey Allah. That is why you're here. Don't get lost. Sometimes we get so distracted in the life of this world. The dunya keeps us in a rat race. You know the rat race? Like you're like a rat in a wheel, and there's a piece of cheese right in front of you, and you're constantly trying to get that cheese, but you never get it. You're just going in circles and not really moving. That's like the dunya. In fact, the dunya, you know what it means? Like one of the meanings of the dunya? It's grapes that always evade you. No matter how close you get to them, they always evade you. You never really get it. And if you do get it, it's just an illusion. It's not going to last for eternity. So we have to keep our eyes on the prize, so to speak. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says these things in the Quran, and then the rational proofs of Allah's existence is preponderance of something, existence from nothing, with existence. Something cannot come from nothing on its own. If something exists that comes from non-existence and nothing, what it caused that thing to exist from non-existence, to be something from nothing? Because nothing only produces nothing. Non-existence only produces non-existence. Non-existence cannot produce existence unless there is an all-powerful, uncreated, eternal, external factor, a power that has a preponderance of causing that thing to exist over non-existence. And we call that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it doesn't happen by itself and on its own. So when we see this, there's what's called, I don't know if you guys have studied the Kalam cosmological argument. This is, obviously academic. You're talking about atheism and Aqidah. This is an academic talk. But the Kalam cosmological argument is this. Everything that has a beginning of its existence has a cause. Something has a beginning, it must have a cause. The universe creation has a beginning. Thus, the universe or creation has a cause, and that cause must be beginningless, causeless, timeless, baseless, changeless, immaterial, and endless, eternal, which we call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything else is an effect. Allah is the sole cause. In order for things to be here the way they are, it's not random chance. It's not by itself. It's not nature. It's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused that to be in creation. Contingent being. What is a contingent being? Anybody know? Contingent being is what? It is a creation that depends on a necessary being to exist. A necessary being is a creator that depends on nothing and whose existence is necessary, which we call Allah. And then they have things like, I don't know if you know the infinite regress or circularity. These are things you can look at. Dr. William Craig, he has a whole lecture on this, and it comes actually out of works of Imam Ghazali as well. And there's something called infinite regress. Is like Amr created Zayd, Zayd created Amr all the way back for eternity. Only problem is what? It's not infinite or eternal because everyone has a beginning. Everyone was created. If Amr creates Zayd and Zayd creates Bakr, and that goes on forever, well, each one has a beginning. Each one was created, and so none of them are infinite. None of them are actually eternal. That's a problem. So thus they cannot be God. Because remember, that external force, that power that has the preponderance of existence over non-existence must be eternal. It must have always existed and never came into existence. Okay? And so then there's the circularity. You know the circularity? Chicken and egg argument. Did the chicken create the egg or did the egg create the chicken? And goes on forever. So Amr creates Bakr, Bakr creates Amr, Amr creates Zayd, Zayd creates Bakr, Bakr creates Amr, Amr creates Zayd, round and round and round we go. Again, same argument, both have a beginning, both were created, both are finite and not infinite, and so that obviously could not be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You guys know the story of Imam Abu Hanifa and the man who asked him 3 questions? It's attributed to Imam Abu Hanifa. It's a very powerful story. So this man, he comes to Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah ta'ala, and he says to him, he says, I have 3 questions for you, ya Imam. He said, what is it? He said, how do we know Allah exists if we can't see him? And he says, and what's your second question? He said, how can the shaitan be punished by fire when he's created from smokeless fire? He's created from fire, how can he be punished by fire? What's your third question? He said, why are we taking account and judged for something that was predetermined before we were even created? Oh, these are 3 big questions, by the way. You take a philosophy class, even a psychology class, anthropology class, they'll throw this at you and your kids. I'm telling you right now, why this is so important, this aqidah and this, it's affecting your children. I can just tell you right now, one way or another, and especially us here in the West Coast, it is affecting your children. They are being exposed to this,
They are teaching this. I would actually say they're indoctrinating and programming our children to believe this. So you have to know it to explain it to your children, and your children have to know it. So they can counter on it, have strong aqidah in their own belief, and then be able to counter this one. So Imam Abu Hanifa, he does one action to answer all three of these man's questions. He takes a harp piece of clay and he throws it at the man's head. I'm not saying you should do this, okay? Place and time. I'm not saying you should. Well, he did it. I'm gonna teach that person. So he throws this at the man's head. And why did you do that? That hurt. He said, you asked me 3 questions. I answered them. He said, how did you answer them? I'm taking you to a court, and you're going to sit in front of a judge and answer for what you did. Okay. Now, Abu Hanifa was a qadi himself. He was himself. All right. So they go in front of the judge. The judge says, what's your case? Says, I man, it's Abu Hanifa. He's playing at me and he hurt my head. The judge says, Imam, why did you do that? He says, well, he asked me some questions. I simply answered them. He said, how did you answer me? He said, well, you asked, how can Allah exist if we can't see him? He said, you feel pain? He said, yeah, right here. He said, do you see it? Oh, no, I don't see it, but you believe it exists? Yes. So can you believe in something even though you don't see it? Like pain? Yes, you can. And so then he says, well, what about the second question? You think the pain exists even though you don't see it? He says, well, you asked how the shaitan can be punished by fire when he was created from fire. Are you not created from clay? And he punished you with what? Clay. So that can cause punishment, just like fire can cause punishment for the shaitan. And he said, okay, well, what about the third one? He said, did you not take me to a court to be judged in front of a judge? He said, yeah. Well, wasn't that decreed before I was created? Yeah. He said, so we still have accountability that people are judged for things and take into account for things that were determined before they were even created, just like you took me to this court to be judged. So that's the wisdom of Imam Abu Hanifa. Now, here's the thing. Somebody says, and this is a very common thing, they'll say to you, your children, if not your children, your grandchildren for sure. Why do you believe in this Allah if you can't see him? Oh, well, do you believe in love? Right? Everybody's experienced love. Maybe from your spouse, your parents, your children. Everybody experienced love, your brothers and sisters. Do you believe in love? Yeah, I believe in love. Everybody feels love. Okay, do you see it? Yeah. So you know it exists? Yeah, I'm certain it exists. Even though you don't see it? Yes, even though I don't see it. Now there are signs of it. Okay, just like there are signs or symptoms of pain. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us his existence through his signs. His ayat. Okay, that's why the verses in the Quran are called ayat. سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين أنه الحق. We shall show them our signs in the horizons and within their own selves until it is clear that this is the truth. Even if you look at the signs of Allah on the horizon, you'll see. Has anybody you ever see that meme of the atheist in the sunset? So it's a meme, right? Like a cartoon meme put on social media, it's going around. And it shows this guy, and he's like, it's like dark night, gloomy, cloudy. And he's like, oh, God, if you exist, show me a sign. He's, I'm an atheist. God, show me, if you exist, show me a sign. So then the next picture is like this beautiful, bright sunrise. And it's illuminating the whole horizon. And he's like, still waiting. It's like, what? For real? You're still waiting? It's right in front of you. You don't see it? Okay, even to the point, that's on the horizon. Some will say, like, look at your hand. Your hand spells Allah in Arabic. Your hand. Did you ever notice that you have like the 1 here and the 8? You flip it, it's 18, it's 81. What does that equal? 99 names of Allah. Did you know, your heartbeat? Let's say just yourself. Your heartbeat. In the West, they say like, dub, 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 dub. Every culture has their different way of explaining what the heartbeat sounds like. Right? But what we do know about the heartbeat is it has what? Contraction and expansion. Contraction, expansion, right? So if you really listen to your own heartbeat and you look at the name of Allah, there's contraction and expansion Allah, 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 Allah. So some scholars even say the contraction expansion in the name Allah, Allah, Allah is similar to the contraction and expansion of your own heartbeat. That your heart is beating the drums of Allah. Your heart is doing dhikr of Allah 24/7 as long as you're alive, but you forgot. It's ghafla, you're heedless, and you forgot what your heart is doing. So this is some of the stories that they say, and of course, I'll tell you. I'll tell you a story. I sat with this. So unfortunately, like I said, we have a lot of people leaving Islam, especially in Seattle. Seattle is a very atheist area of the country, one of the highest. I didn't know that, but it's one of the highest in the country, if not the highest. And I was sitting with this Muslim sister. Well, she was a Muslim sister, I can say that. And with my wife, and she comes from a conservative, traditional Muslim family, very righteous, very practicing Muslim family. I know the family, really good family. And that doesn't guarantee that their own daughter is not going to fall prey to atheism. And even though, the dad is in tech, and so he firewalls the whole house, so they didn't go on the wrong websites, but he couldn't firewall YouTube. And she was spending hours and hours watching videos about atheism on YouTube and being influenced by that, indoctrinated by that. Plus, she ran into some bad friends, bad influences, right? Bad influences can make or break it. It can be one boy that can take your daughter astray, one girl can take your son astray, literally. So, bad influences plus watching these videos, she ended up liking a boy that was not Muslim, who was himself an atheist, and also convincing her. So we sat with her, my wife and I, we started because her dad wanted us to sit with her, and she used to be a Muslim, trying to give dawah and bring her back to the faith. Of course. So I said, come on, like, where do you think all this perfect harmony, order, and beauty all came from? Perfect, if the sun was a little closer to Earth, we'd all burn up. You know that? Just a little bit. If the sun was a little further from Earth, we'd all freeze to death. If the moon was a little further closer, there'd be like tidal waves and tsunamis. Controls the tides. Okay, if things were just a little off, we'd all be destroyed. And this perfect harmony of this universe that Allah created, an intelligent design by an intelligent designer. Like, where do you think all this came from? And she looked me straight in the eye, seriously said, aliens. Like, what? Serious? Aliens? It's like, by the way, this is a neo-atheist argument. Aliens. Ancient aliens came thousands of years ago and, somehow planted life on Earth. And that's how we all evolved. From that life was brought by aliens. And I said, okay. Who created those aliens? Well, that's awful. Okay. Other aliens. And who created those aliens? Well, I don't know, but I was like, okay, where do they come from? It came from the space. It came from the sky. Like, okay. I was like, is it maybe a shorter leap of faith to believe that Allah created those quote unquote aliens in the sky they came from? Isn't that a greater leap of faith to think that there's no God, that that these aliens, you believe in these aliens that created life? Doesn't that seem like a larger leap of faith than just to believe in Allah? She said, well, I can't, same thing, here it goes. I can't see, I can't feel, I can't physically touch Allah. So I said, what? I said, hey, I got a question then. Can you physically touch, feel, and see gravity? No? But you know it exists, right? Yeah? And how do you know it exists? Oh, because, the science. Like Newton, right? The apple fell on Newton's head, and he knew that gravity exists. You didn't see gravity, but you know it exists because of its science. Do you not see the signs all around you, in the horizons and in yourself, that Allah exists, and He's showing you it? And isn't that more likely to believe? Isn't that more plausible of a belief than that God does not exist and that aliens brought us to life? Doesn't that sound like some crazy UFO X-Files thing? Does that sound weird to you? So anyway, round and round we went. And it turns out, well, my boyfriend's atheist. Okay, there you go. There's the answer. Your boyfriend. So you were trying to please your boyfriend because your boyfriend's atheist. Okay. Now we get to the bottom of it. So you can't be Muslim with an atheist boyfriend and he wants you to be atheist. Okay. That being said, there was a debate that ended real quick between a Christian actually and an atheist. So between Christian and an atheist, what was that debate like? So it was actually quite fast. And what happened was, this Christian guy, religious guy, he was debating this, professor who was very knowledgeable, quote unquote, outwardly educated. And he asked him a question. He said, I believe, God, you discover God, you get to know God, through the science and knowledge you have. He said to the atheist guy, he said, how much knowledge would you say you have? He said, arrogant as well. I have a lot of knowledge. I'm very educated. I have double PhD, blah, 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 blah. He says, okay. He said, well, compared to all the knowledge, so he draws a circle, actually, big circle. He says, this is all the knowledge, for example, in the universe. How much of this knowledge do you think you have? And so that he takes like a quarter of it. I'm like, yeah, right. Takes a quarter, like, a quarter of the knowledge, He takes about a quarter of the circle. It's about this much. He says, is it possible that you have not yet discovered God and the knowledge you don't have? The rest of that 3/4 of the circle, the knowledge you do not have, is it possible you did not discover God in there? So maybe you just haven't met God yet. In fact, one of our teachers said, there is no atheist. There's just people angry at God. Most people who are actually atheists, they had a very bad experience with religion or religious people. My experience with a lot of people, here's what I found. It's not actually about the existence of Allah or not. It's more about trauma. To be honest with you, it's more about trauma. Most of the time it is, they were burnt by religious people or by religion. Or here's the big one. Here's the big one. They want to be free and independent to do whatever they want without any rules or any consequences. Right? So majority of the cases I run across, which is more than you'd like to see, actually more than anybody would like to see, is I want to be free and independent to do what I want to do, the way I want to do it, within any laws, any rules, no Sharia. No Sharia, no Islam, no Quran, Sunnah. I want to be able to do whatever I want to do. And that's why I'm an atheist and I've left this. It's still better for you to do whatever you want to do and still be Muslim. Even if you don't practice Islam, because at least that's your gateway to heaven. Eventually you go to heaven for a journey, you die in Shahada. Yeah, sure, it's better to be Muslim and do all the sins in the world and not practice anything in Islam than to be a kafir and do all the good things you say you do. Because none of it counts. So I want to just tell a story about Imam ibn Hanbal and the atheist. You guys know the story about Imam ibn Hanbal? When he debated the atheist? So Imam ibn Hanbal, he was going to an island to debate an atheist. And he deliberately came late, right? Comes late to the thing. So people start to leave. They had all these people around. It was going to be like a show, like the dirty guy versus Imam ibn Hanbal. And so the man says, where you been? He says, I was, you wouldn't believe it. I was on my way and I had to cross, the water to get to the island. And so, the trees started to form into boats, and then the vines came down and tied the logs, and then the bigger leaves formed sails, and I was able to jump on this boat and take it all the way across the river onto the island. And the guy's like, that's ridiculous. What do you think? A boat creates itself? Really? It's like, and you think the universe was created by jets? And then the man says, he made a point, and the man took Shahada and became Muslim. He actually debated and he became Muslim, took Shahada. Okay. One of the non-Muslim scientists of our recent times, he said to believe that the creation was created by random chance is to believe that a tornado goes through a junkyard and creates a Boeing 757. Can you imagine that? Do you know the engineering and time and money that goes into a Boeing 757? Can you imagine just a tornado going through some car junkyard and just like all of a sudden it's an airplane? Who would believe that? Oh, that happened randomly, by the way. I don't care how many years, it's not going to ever happen like that. In fact, the Arabs, they say, it's like throwing like Arabic letters in the wind and waiting for time to have deep poetic poetry. They say that's impossible. It's impossible. And it was the Bedouin who said what? I know that the sign, I know if I see, this is a Bedouin, like, you say somebody who doesn't have education. He says, I know if I see the hooves in the sand. Oh, he said, I know if I see the shoe marks in the sand that a man walked by, and that if camel dung was left behind, that a camel came by, and I look at the universe and I know Allah created all of this. Like things don't leave a trace by themselves. And even some of the ulama mentioned that if you have a child, a baby, so babies are born on fitrah, natural disposition. If you like take a toy, okay, and you throw it like you're from behind the baby and you throw it in front, depending on age, of course, the baby will look behind to see where that come from. Right? Because even babies, according to their fitrah, or young children, they know that there's a cause and effect, that things don't just come out of nowhere, they happen for a reason. So why are we still looking and playing with the toy as adults? Well, look at the toy. There's a toy that magically appeared by random chance. Let's dissect it and play with it. Where did that toy come from? A baby knows. Don't you know? Right? So we think we're more intellectual and advanced, and in some ways we're actually further behind. So I want to talk just about the Prophet Muhammad's life and his story as a proof of Islam, the proof of God, the proof of the truth of the Quran and Sunnah. The Prophet Muhammad before he was a prophet and messenger, at the age of 40, he was a prophet, right? And he becomes a prophet with Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. He was a prophet in spirit before, when Adam was between clay and mud, between water and clay, as our Prophet himself says, but he was a prophet outwardly in the dunya at the age of 40, when he receives the first revelation, read in the name of thy Lord. And then he becomes a messenger when he's ordered to convey that revelation at Ya'yul Mudaththir Qum fa'andhir. Oh, you are wrapped up, stand and inform the people, instruct the people. So he was Sadiq al-Amin his whole life, before he was a prophet and messenger. To the point where they entrusted him to what? Put the black stone on the Kaaba. Remember the chiefs that came, they all had like a blanket or a sheet, and they all kind of brought the black stone together because they were arguing about who's the one that's going to put it on the Kaaba. And then they saw who? As-Sadiq al-Amin, the trustworthy, the truthful. And they said, this is Muhammad, the one who does not lie, who's trustworthy. Let him decide for us. And he comes up with a plan. All the chiefs will hold a piece of the cloth and they'll put the black stone on it. They'll carry it to the Kaaba. And then he will put the black stone on the Kaaba. They entrusted him to do that. And then as soon as he says what? Qulu la ilaha illallah tuflihu, say la ilaha illallah, you'll be successful, like in Ta'if, they stone him. Right? As soon as he comes with the message of Islam, all of a sudden now it's a problem. Now he's a liar, he's kadab. And that's actually a proof from the Quran. Because how many times do we read in the Quran when they say you're kadab, you're a liar. They say you're a sahir, you're a sorcerer. They say you're majnoon, you're crazy. Why would he say that about himself if he wrote the book? First of all, he was unlettered. He could not read or he could not write, which is a perfection for him and a deficiency for us, but perfect for the Prophet Muhammad. Why? To prove that he did not read other books and wrote the Quran. He was not a poet. In fact, one time he tried to do poetry with Abu Bakr, who knew poetry, and it didn't quite rhyme right. So Abu Bakr said, yeah, Rasulullah, it'd be better if you said it like this, because there was so rhymed and there was prose and all. So it was accurate. He was not a poet. He was not somebody who could read or write for a reason, because he was the one bringing divine revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's only a proof for him, not against him. Okay? So the fact that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam could not read, could not write, was Sadiq al-Amin, okay, is a proof itself that what he brought, what is also the truth, and came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you can imagine, you know how you have like a post office, and then you have a mail person, mailman, mailwoman, and you have a letter. If you have a letter that comes to your door, right, you're like, oh, that must have been brought here by who? You didn't say like it randomly happened by chance or magically appeared. You say, who brought that? The mailman. Where did the mailman come from? The post office, right? So if you see somebody who is truthful and trustworthy, who's only known to have perfect character, who everybody loved, you say, who sent him? He's coming with this message. He's bringing this letter, this risala. If he's bringing the message of Islam, where did he get it? Who sent him? And this should take you back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is only a proof of Allah. In fact, one of the greatest proofs of Allah's existence is the akhlaq of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why would he show mercy to his enemies who tried to kill him? Right? Why in the Battle of Uhud, when they chipped his tooth, his canine tooth, when they split his forehead, when they split his lower lip, and he was blood coming down his face, he fell into a ditch, and he comes up, and the Sahabi says, Ya Rasulullah, your dua is answered. Ask Allah to destroy your enemies. And so what does he do? He catches his blood, first of all, because he knew if a drop of his blood were to hit the ground, that Allah would annihilate all of his enemies. So out of a mercy to the world, he catches his own blood, And he raises his hand and he says, Allahumma hadi qawmi fa innahum la ya'lamun. Oh Allah, guide my people. Look, use the word my people. Oh, me. Oh, not curse them, not punish them, not destroy them. Guide my people. They're not even Muslim. Guide my people, for truly they know not. They do not know who he is, that he is a messenger of God. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So, in conclusion, the Quran and science as a proof of Allah's literal, infallible, miraculous words. Yes. I mean, we cover some of that. I mean, there are many things you can look at, like the Quran and science. And, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking about, and it is like this, after that we created the earth round-like or egg-shaped. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that even at a time when people believed the earth was flat, and some people still believe the earth is flat, right? But Allah has said it's like round-shaped or egg-shaped. He mentions that in the Quran. He says about the two seas, and you can see this in the Horn of Africa. If you ever go there, you can see there's like salt water, like ocean meets ocean. And because of the density, the different densities of salt water, there's like a line between them, like a barzakh, a barrier. And they're even different colors, and you can clearly see the line, and they do not cross. And who said that happens? The one who created that to happen. Between them is a barrier, and one does not run into the other. So there's a lot of miracles you can look at in the Quran. Some will say like, well, the Big Bang Theory. It's just a theory. But they'll say there was condensed molecules of heat that all were, so hot and so condensed that they exploded. And they, over millions, in fact, I'll say billions of years, some say like 420 billion, different numbers, years, the universe as we know was created from the Big Bang, including the creation of time and space. Okay, interesting. Right. Who created the molecules of heat to make that thing, and who caused it to burst and explode? Right? As Allah says, we open them up. That the heavens and earth were split asunder, and then we exploded them. We opened them up. Allah is the one that says He does that in the Quran. So if you're going to claim this Big Bang Theory, which we don't know exactly if it's true or false, but if you want to claim this, the beginning of space and time as we know it, and the existence of creation over billions of years to become what it is today, if you want to call that the Big Bang, then I ask you, who's the Big Banger? Who caused the Big Bang? Those molecules of heat, condensed heat, did not come out of nowhere. Who created that? And who started time and space? And whoever it was, that being must be timeless, changeless, eternal, immaterial, uncreated, in order to then first create something like that. Right? So it all comes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He must be omnipotent, creation of time and space and matter into randomness. There's obviously the big crunch and intelligent design, which requires intelligent designer. So Allah must be omniscient, all-knowing, and all-powerful. And then I think we're pretty much done for time. I'll just say something really briefly, because I know this comes up, and especially in our colleges, and especially amongst our youth, that evolution, because this is all getting used to send ourselves and our kids astray. And I'll just end on this. Evolution, briefly, from an Islamic perspective. Again, I'm not a science, but there's an article Sheikh has about evolution. And basically, he mentions macro and microevolution. Macroevolution is that things skip from one species to another. So some will say the definition of a species is two beings that can mate together and reproduce. And if they can't, then it's another species. So macroevolution is the jump of one species to another species. Originally one species becomes another species. Microevolution is the change or adaptations of species within the same species. Okay. And of course, as Muslims in our lifetimes, even we can observe that there is change and adaptation of Allah's creation. Even Charles Darwin in 1893, he wrote a book called The Origin of Species, and he noticed like birds that had longer beaks survived because they were able to reach food over those that had shorter beaks. So can things change? They've noticed this even in rabbits and wolves, that there are Allah's creation that can change over time because they adapt to their environment, to their climate, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, but they're still within the same species. They're not changing to a new species. So that is something. So they have survival of the fittest. Can the fittest and the strongest continue to survive and pass on the genes? By Allah's will and grace, if He wills, we can. Natural selection, we don't believe in natural selection. Nature doesn't select who survives and who continues and what genes get passed on. Allah does, right? So we say Allah selection, and we say survival of the fittest according to what Allah wills. So we don't actually have a problem with that. There is more probability of the reality of microevolution that we see in our lifetimes, which is more real. We see that even about in other things as well. And macroevolution is quite a jump. There's no really fossil record of it, because it has to be an observable fact. Well, this has happened over quote unquote millions of years. So how is it an observable fact in our lifetime? And so it's quite a large leap of faith to believe something jumped from one species to another. Here's our Islamic perspective. Our Islamic perspective in our Aqidah is وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ. Allah says we created everything alive from water. How that happened, how long that took, we don't know. We don't know. What we do know, so a lot of Islam is Allah knows, we don't know. What we do know is, do we negate the possibility of microevolution, especially? Not necessarily. It does change, adaptation, and things, genes get passed on, certain ones survive, certain ones don't, people change according, animals and people change according to their environment, okay. But what we do deny is that human beings share a common ancestor with a primate, or that we originally came from monkeys or apes. That is something we have a red line and say absolutely not in Islam. We were honored to be human beings by Allah from the first human being, Adam alayhi salam, and from him, Allah created Hawa, his wife, Eve, and they had children which became our forefathers and mothers, which we are the descendants of. So what we do negate strongly is that we do not believe that we somehow evolved from a primate or a shared ancestor of a primate. In fact, we started as unique, special human beings from Adam alayhi salam down. And if you want to believe that your ancestors swung from trees, marhaban, you can believe what you want to believe. You can believe what you want to believe. I don't believe that. Like it also begs the question: why are there still monkeys and apes today? How come they haven't evolved, right? And so even one of my teachers. He's like, somebody was believed that, in evolution, that we come from monkeys and apes, which we don't believe. And so, he said, so he brought the students and they called him. He said, oh, you're the one that says you're a Qird ibn Qird. You're the one that says you're a monkey, the son of a monkey, who's the son of a monkey, who's son of a. He's like, no, don't say that. Don't say that. People can hear you. Like, well, you're the one saying it, not me. Like, why are you so ashamed and embarrassed? Because it doesn't sound right, does it? That your great-great-great-great-great-grandmother or grandfather was a monkey or an ape. Nobody likes to, that's embarrassing, right? So we say no. وَلَقَدْ قَرَبْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Allah says, indeed, we have dodled the children of Adam, alayhi salam, and that he was a human. Now, that being said, we do not negate the possibility, because they'll say, well, look about Lucy. Lucy's the oldest primate we have on record, and she's not even a full, complete primate, or whatever the combo they say, half human, half primate. So we'd say is there could have been creation that existed during that time. Because we know when Adam alayhi salam came from heaven, when he descended from Jannah, what was already there? He was told to what? Name the animals on the earth. Name the creatures on earth. There could have been apes and monkeys then that were human-like, but not human, because the definition is insan natik, a rational speaking animal. Maybe they didn't have the ability to rationale and to use reason and logic like we do. They could have been other, whether the Neanderthals, they could have been other creation that existed at one time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created that were human-like in some ways and even maybe used tools and even maybe hunted, but they did not have the intellect and the ability to use logic and rationale to believe and worship in one God and follow a prophet like we do. So they were not classified as human beings. That's from Adam. It could have been some other creation that was human-like, or ape-like, or something like that. We do know that Allah turned some of the creation into monkeys and pigs. So who knows if that has anything to do with it, which is also mentioned in the Quran. So my point is that it's possible that there were things that existed that were like humans, but were not humans, and that humans were a unique, special creation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. And it all also comes down to what? Being mukallaf, being legally responsible and addressed by the Quran and Sunnah, being one who can use the reason and free thought to believe in this religion and the existence of Allah. And there's other creation that could have existed that were not that could have looked like a human in some ways, but were not human. In fact, we also have the belief in our Aqidah that before humans were on earth, there were jinn. And before jinn, there were angels. So Allah, first there were angels here and in the heavens, and then there were jinn, and then there were humans. Now we know that jinn can sometimes take form. How do we know what they found are not jinns that took form that were here before us? I mean, you know, the whole like UFOs are finding now, and they're like putting in the media. UFOs, ghosts, goblins, aliens, dinosaurs maybe, Lucy. How do we know they're not all jinn? Allah, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, if they can take form, how do we know they're not jinn that took form? And they were here before us, so they could be millions and millions of years old. Okay? That's part of that possible explanation. At the end of the day, we say, Allah, we don't know. Find out one Jannah, inshallah. Find out the akhirah, we'll ask Allah. But what we do have an aqidah is Adam was a unique, special creation that Allah formed and fashioned with his two hands, metaphorically, and that we are the descendants of Adam alayhi salam, and he was a complete human being who was a speaking, rational animal, haywan natiq, and was not a primate, nor did he come from a primate or anything like that. So inshallah, that concludes our talk today. Jazakallah khair for your patience and for your attendance. Inshallah, we learned and benefited and covered some things about atheism and about evolution. There's more, but we don't have enough time. Maybe another time, inshallah, come back, visit your community. It's been an honor and privilege to be here, to teach, to serve, to do the khutbah, and you have an amazing, wonderful community, mashallah. Again, Allah reward all of you and all those who put this together. There is obviously the whole problem of evil and suffering, but maybe another time we could get into that, inshallah, as I've gone on a few tangents, just a couple, and went a little bit late. If there is time, we can do a Q&A if anybody's able to do that. I heard we'll go until 10 or something like that, 10:05. So maybe we have a few minutes, 10 minutes for Q&A, inshallah. So if anybody has any questions or anything like that, feel free to ask directly, or you can even write it down and bring it forward if you like, if you don't want to say it aloud. Anybody have any questions or anything? Hey, Jazakallah khair, barakallah feek. Thanks for having us, mashallah. Anybody have any questions or anything? Yeah. You have questions?
What happened? Was atheism. It was about like rebirths. What about it? There's a rebirth here. It was about good. Listen. Really? Can you tell me? Oh, right. Can you tell me?
Right.
Someone's taking the class. Right? Yeah.
Right. Right. So she asked, how can we prepare our children to grow up in a society, be productive human beings, and not be afraid to politely or gently push back on certain issues? Yeah, I mean, obviously, we should first and foremost teach our children Islamic values, morals, principles, character. Islamic education is first and foremost grounding them so they can learn and benefit and practice it. Of course, as parents, children see, children do, right? So we have to be a living, breathing example and role model for our kids, because if our Islam is deficient and weak and inaccurate, that's going to reflect on that. They will see what we do and do the same thing, and if we don't do something, they won't do it. So we have to lead by example, and then have them in good environments and surroundings where there is good suhbah, good companionship, good influences, trying to avoid bad influences. I personally, and I mean, people can do what they want. I'm personally more of a fan of like homeschooling, Islamic schooling, versus public schooling. I mean, there's a place and time for everything, but that's my personal thing because of the programming and indoctrination that happens over time. It's not just education, there's also environment. So if our kids are in good, positive environments with good people and they're learning their deen and they're learning Islam, and of course, they're also learning their academic sciences, we want them to do well in their math and science and history and everything else. And we want them to get good grades, we want them to work hard, and we want them to be successful in this life, and most importantly, in the next life. Of course, the akhirah is always first above the dunya. And I've seen this happen, at least in my context in Seattle, over and over again. If we superimpose the dunya and everything in it over the akhirah to our children. Like this is number one. You have to get good grades, you have to get good career, you have to get good job, you get married, have a house, have a car. If we just kind of push this narrative that this is number one, this is most important, and what we've done as our children grow up and get older is taught them that the dunya is number one and the akhirah is number two. So then don't be surprised, right? If our children become 18, are free to do whatever they want, a free country, and they say, I don't want the akhirah anymore, I just want the dunya. Because they've been trained to love that and attach to that and value that over everything else. Religion, when you have time, secondary, something you keep in the closet, not public, right? So one, a lot of confidence building with our youth. We should be proud of who they are and what they believe. And we should have a balance of the Islamic good environment and knowledge, and then also their academic sciences and knowledge, and then also get them in khidmah. This is really important, by the way, even at a young age. Service. We're serving the food, whatever, bringing the water, helping people, youth programs, youth halakas, just get them in some form of service. Any way to help. Masjid, for the community, always get them involved in some form of khidmah. And then also giving them some responsibility, not a whole bunch of responsibility for a young age, but what is appropriate for their age. Osama bin Zayd radiallahu anhu was given the ability to lead an entire army. He was a general at the age of 17. And by the way, Omar and Ali went, right, a 17-year-old is 8. So, give them some responsibility, let them learn from trial and error, making their own mistakes, but also guiding them, being there for them. And having a trust relationship with our children where they can tell us anything, even if we don't like it. I know it's hard. They can tell us anything, even if we don't like it, and even if we're going to be disappointed. That they still tell us, because here's why. It's better they tell us if we can deal with it than they don't tell us and tell somebody else or just continue to do something. It's better we're aware of it. So I think these things, and then I would say just this pride, good pride, this confidence of being Muslim. And they're not afraid and they're not ashamed to look Muslim, act Muslim, talk Muslim, be Muslim. And if they get something that is counterintuitive to Islam or that is challenging Islam, they, are not afraid to gently, politely push back, but also they have the tools and education and knowledge to push back with, because you have to know what you're dealing with and you have to know how to flip. And I always say, here's what I went to grad school in Seattle University, which is like the most diverse college in Washington State. And I was exposed to a whole bunch of stuff. And there was things like, I would let just people talk, a lot of the LGBTQ community. So they would have their own presentations and homophobia and, promote their way of life and almost impose that on others. Anyway, whatever. But when they started, I was okay, let you be you. This is graduate school and what am I going to say and do? But when they started to say something either against Islam or a misconception about Islam, I would always push back. And I'd be like, whoa, hold on a second. And then I'd clarify, teach, educate, again, politely, civilly. We don't have to be aggressive. We don't have to, stomp and, throw a tantrum. We don't have to shout. We don't curse. This is not the edit of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We don't have to fight fire with fire and, do what they do to us. No, you can still politely, civilly, with knowledge, educate people, clarify. And if you're composed, people generally will listen. They may not agree with you, but they generally listen. And at the very least, here's what I've seen in my life. Malcolm X, the great Sheikh, Malik Shabazz, he said, if you do not stand for something, you fall for anything, right? So teach our kids that. And also that, if, you don't take a stance, they will walk all over you and you give them an inch to take a mile. And also, I would tell our kids this, is that, if they're going to come at you with something, you don't be afraid, don't be ashamed, and stand for what you believe in, because ultimately people will respect that. Americans will respect people who stand by their principles and their values, even if they don't agree with them. Who they disrespect are those that are wishy-washy, go with the flow, do what everybody else is doing. And if you just, this person, they don't stand for nothing. They just do whatever everybody else is doing. Easily influenced, easily changed. They're not going to respect that person. But somebody that stands their ground, holds to their principles and beliefs, even if they don't like it, and if they disagree with it, they'll eventually come around and respect that person. And I've seen that over and over and over again. Right? And that's how you see the life of Prophet Muhammad. How many times was he disrespected? How many times they try to harm him, hurt him, assassinate him? And how many of them, look at Taif. You remember the whole Taif story? stoning him, they all came back Muslims. In his lifetime, they all came back Muslims. And he, out of his mercy, decided not to destroy them with the angel and all that. So, Daddy, have patience, have sabr, show good character, be merciful, stand your ground, be assertive in certain situations, be firm when it comes to your deed, when it comes to your belief and practice. Don't be afraid to counter, to push back. I guess maybe a little bit. It's a long answer short, right? Or short answer long, one of the two. Right. Right. Yeah, and I can tell you. So he's asking, what did they do that the conservative, traditional, practicing Muslim family do that could have led to their daughter, leaving Islam and becoming an atheist? I can tell you what happened. I mean, I sat with both of them and I was asking questions. Of course, they're very concerned, and they have other children too. They didn't want us to make the same mistake, and their other children are actually practicing, but they're also younger. A lot of it's when they get college age and they go to college and they meet people and have different ideas and beliefs and all that and influences. So I actually that's why I mentioned it in the talk, is because I started, okay, that's where, and I think they try to correct that for their other children, but it's honestly and I've seen this over and over again. It's that whole point of so much stress and pressure to succeed in the dunya, in their grades, in their secular education, and making money and getting a job and building their career, all this focus, all this attention. And basically the person just thought that was the number one priority. And dunya akhir was always second, deen was always second, salat was always second, so everything was always secondary. Even if the family might have done that, the pressure was on their academic secular studies than it was. And I would also say this is, there are certain courses we of course want our children to be advanced, right? So it's like STEM courses and stuff. So believe this or not, I mean, I'm not saying that STEM class, I mean, yes, we want our children to be successful in like academic studies, and we want them to be in advanced programs, and we want them to be ahead, and we want them to get good grades, and we want them to get a job. Yes. But I have seen a pattern. And I've seen that the more advanced classes, the most advanced classes turn out to have the most Muslims that become atheists. And I'm like, why is this happening? The kids that are going to these STEM classes, these advanced classes and all this, why are they turning to atheism? And then I kind of looked into it and found that, they are strongly teaching them critical theory and analysis and deconstructionism and question everything, break down everything, dismantle everything. Don't believe, it's all secular, it's all worldly, it's all material, it's all surface, no depth, no meaning, no akhirah, no God. And I'm like, if they're exposed to that every single day, parents just think they're taking their kids to school. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, like the program. I'm just saying, I'm taking my kid to school, they're in advanced classes. But what are they teaching them in those advanced classes? And if there's no counter, there's no alternative to that. There's no other, I'm also the person doing things or Islamic classes or spending time with the Sheikh or the Sheikh or in some youth halakas or doing khidmah in the masjid or in the community. If there's no alternative to that, and that's all they're being exposed in day in and day out, you have to question what happens when they're done with it. I mean, personally, I understand there are some situations for some people and some families where they have to go to public schools, and especially poor families that can't afford, whether it's private schooling, Islamic schooling, or they're not themselves educated enough to do homeschooling. So I understand some people's circumstances. If you want my personal opinion, like for my own child, I would never have my child in public schools. Never. That's me personally. I mean, I'm not going to say that's for everyone, but because I went through public schools, I spent K through 12, but also 8 years of college. And so like, I'm very well the system, just how it works. And again, it's not just education, it's the environment that's the most dangerous and the influences. So I personally would not have that. I mean, maybe college if they're grounded and strong and have humanity knowledge, okay, maybe, right? And that still will probably be, you know, supervised. But like, you know, I just wouldn't do it for my own children, even though I went through the whole thing myself, because that's why I learned all the bad things. That's why I learned all the wrong things were all there. That's where all the influences. So I would not, for my own self, encourage it. Oh, with that being said, I don't necessarily tell other people that you can't do that, or, you know, it's up to the families. I personally would do it. I don't recommend it. I would say homeschooling or Islamic schooling. I would even say like, probably like private schooling is better than the public school, because it's basically the government raising your children. They're just bringing their, whatever is in the policy, the political ideologies, whatever is in the media, the culture, whatever the celebrities are doing, it's all brought to the public schools. And that always changes. And it's way worse today than it was when I was a kid, right? So it's just ever changing. You wonder where's it going to go? How far is it going to go? Not to mention the whole like liberal left LGBTQ agenda that's being pushed down our kids' throat, whether they like it or not. I mean, forced. So I have a big problem with that. And I personally don't believe that I wouldn't do that for my own. And think about it this way. I tell people think like this. You know, like an IOK here, you guys have IOK, is it Los Angeles near there? Islamic Institute of Knowledge, right? IOK. They have like a K through 12 Islamic school program, right? And by that time they graduate, like most of them are Hufad, they memorize Quran, they practice their 5 pillars, they have Islamic knowledge, they speak Arabic, and then they prepare them even for college. They do even have running start and so forth. So I was just thinking, okay, if you had a non-Muslim, let's say an atheist, go to IOK from kindergarten to 12. Always around Muslims, they stop for prayer, you know, maybe they do Jummah, they have to memorize some Quran, they have to learn some Arabic, they have to learn Dua and Dhikr, they also learn math, history, science, and all that. But that's part of the curriculum, right? That's what we believe, and that's our tradition. What's going to happen to that non-Muslim who goes in at kindergarten by the time they graduate at 12th grade? They're either going to be Muslim, okay, which is most likely, or they're going to be very close to Islamism, right? So then now let's reverse the thinking. Take a Muslim kid, put him in a Kafir school from kindergarten to 12. What do you think they're going to come out at the grade of 12? So we think, oh, you know, they come in as angels, but they come out as what?
Yeah, I'm thinking. I thought about this video. You know that video I saw in the video. You know the computer science class? You took a video.
I talked to a father, a broken-hearted father. It's hard to see actually. He was torn. You know, he was basically like, he came to me after Jummah and he said, our family has been Muslim since the beginning of Islam. And our ancestors were all ulama. My father was a scholar, his father was a scholar, his father was a scholar. And my own son, he went to madrasa, you know, he memorized some Quran, he learned the deen, and he met the wrong person. One wrong person. And then he got into drugs, and then he left Salat, he left Sawm, fasting, and then drugs led to partying and alcohol, and which led to a girlfriend, which took him outside the fold of Islam. And now he's not even Muslim. So he says, look, our lineage, our spiritual lineage is cut off. I mean, inshallah, Allah brings him back, but like, look, all the way from Islam, you guys have been Muslim, your entire family, and you've been scholars since the beginning, and now your son is the one who just broke that entire thing and goes to kufr. And then what is his kids going to be like? And then their kids, and then their kids, and then their kids. That goes your whole spiritual lineage. If we can't pass Islam down to our kids, what's the point? What's the whole point of the dunya? If we don't spread this tradition and this religion and pass this on to our kids and our community, then like, what are we doing here? What's the point of life then? You know what I mean? If it ends with us and nothing goes forward, we've lost the whole point of living and having families and kids in the first place. You know what I mean? So, I mean, some of this is out of our control, and some of this, you know, just things happen, and, you know, sometimes people are responsible. They are responsible if they're mukallaf for their own actions and deeds, you know. But, you know, parents have responsibility, but they have responsibility to a certain extent. I mean, they can't control everything and everything like that, you know. So it's a big problem. It's something we need to work on. It's just to see that is devastating. Right? You know, and it's unfortunately becoming more and more common. So I would like to say that was one up. No, it's actually more and more common to see that, hear that. And like I said, I've talked to many parents. See, here's the thing, right? If somebody's child dies on Iman, it's that my child died. Right? My oldest son died. So okay, I can live with that. He died as a baby, and I can live with the fact that he died and is not mukallaf, and he's sinless, and he's pure, and he's innocent, and he's going straight to Jannah. I can live with that as a parent. It's obviously hard emotionally, you know, my family and all that. But I can say, you know, inshallah, we unite with him again in Jannah. You know, we have the hadith, Rasulullah says that the child who dies, you know, is a newborn, pulls the mother into heaven by her umbilical cord, and the father in by his sleeve. So we're hoping for that, because we don't know if we're getting in Jannah, but we know he's in Jannah. So it's like a spiritual insurance policy. Like, hey, you know, in case we don't get there, you know, pull us in, you know. So in that regards, I'm not tripping about, I mean, obviously we're sad, hurt, but it's Allah's will. Allah decreed, it is what it is. I can't change it. And I'm not worried where he is. He's in a better place. He's in Jannah. In fact, if you guys know the hadith, he's studying with Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. He's a talib ilm. I sent my son to be a talib ilm, a student of knowledge of Ibrahim alayhi salam. That's where the dead children go, study. So I'm fine with that. Okay, he's in Jannah, he's in better. Okay. But if Mahi grew up and he was mukallaf and he was pubescent and he left Islam, I could not live with that. I could not live with that. I'm sorry, I could not live with that. That would hurt me way more than him dying. Right? And so I've talked to parents, and the pain they feel when their kids leave Islam is way worse than the pain than the own children die.
A lot of people find out from children, because they are bad, because they don't mind this person. A lot of our parents, when we do mistake, lie and we tell them shy and do it, that causing the people who are, or the children who are born in this country, cannot take that to our personality and kind of say, my dad says this, and he did not a big job of it. That is what a lot of people really from.
Right, of course. That's why we stress that leading by example, being a good role model, children see, children do. And I've seen it over and over again. If you tell your child to do something and you don't do it yourself, your child's not going to listen to you. You know, and even if they do, they'll do it in front of you, but not behind your back. And they'll say, oh, you're just being hypocritical. You're telling me to do this and you don't do it. I mean, like, I even when I was studying in madrasa in Yemen, I met there was this father who was a friend of mine, but like, he was just like, he would not like go to any classes. He did not memorize any Quran. He didn't put any really effort into service or anything or dawah. He's just like, hey, I'm only here for my son to learn Quran and learn knowledge and become a scholar. Right? I'm just here to support him, to learn, memorize Quran, become a scholar, learn the deen, go to madrasa. Okay. And he did that for years. And he didn't do anything. We hardly saw him, even though he lived there. And his son went the other direction as soon as he got to this country. So what do you expect? He didn't have any example to follow. Right? So yeah, I'm a parent too. The onus is on us too. I mean, there's only so far. I mean, like as a child grows up and gets older, and you do the best as you can as a parent to raise them, to train them, to educate them. And that's what's on us, and that is our religious obligation. But if they grow up and they become adults and older, then the responsibility is on their shoulders. We still guide and help and advise and try to be good examples, but now it's on them to, that is now their trust, their responsibility to it. But we have to make sure we gave them everything they could to be successful in that. And even if it turns out, Nuh alayhi salam, who's better father, died Muslim than Nuh? And his son was misguided and went astray. The wife of Lut, alayhi salam, she disobeyed him and was sided with the people of the Qawm of Lut, and she was destroyed with them. And their son was drowned. Okay. They're prophets and messengers. Who's better parents than Muslims and da'is than them? So to a certain point, like you do everything you can, but ultimately they make their own decision, especially as they get older and adults, and they're responsible for their decision. Right? But they have to see a good example that's a living, breathing version of Islam in the house. And if they don't see that, then don't be surprised if they do the opposite. Baba does it. Mama does it. Why can't I do it? or they don't do it. So I'm not gonna do it. You know, so that's a huge, huge thing. Yeah, huge thing. Jazakallah khair. Barakallahu feek. All right, inshallah. Jazakallah khair, everyone. Thank you so much. Allah bless you. Allah reward you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless your community. Shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.
Well, actually, we showed it to all the classes. Yeah, I know everyone.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for coming down from Seattle. A very nice discussion, and we can go on for like more than Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I will come back. And like us again. Jazakallah khair.
And you can also follow Sheikh's pages online at Sheikh Qasim Hatem on Twitter and Facebook. The organization that works for is known as Foundation, MIHRAAB. And you can take a look at their website and the programs that they release online as well.
Zero help in the first one. So you're gonna like go and yeah, it's very nice for my friend trying to get out. I didn't have like I didn't just get it. Yeah. You said that they're too loud. No, but like I have to know I talked to them. Like I talked to them, I'm already I'm gonna buy you can see the members. No, we were just. Assalamu alaikum. No, I was mad at her. I know. Mad at her. What? And I paid my tuition all of a sudden when looking at you. I can't hear her. I was speaking to her. I can't hear her when it's on the. Yeah, remind me of. Yeah, but it's what's that? I got I was hungry. Personally, I can't eat. I must take right now. Here, we're hungry. The ball, you don't want to buy my name. I'm hungry. I already listened to some right now. It was about a human on their story.
If you're not seeing any conflict, then you're like, really doing wrong. I think that we have to ask them to respect. There's and who's going to take the who's going to be here, who's going to be who's going to be on the board, who's going to run the must have everyone. Because the church, they small their who's running their own church? Why are the churches not in church? They lost it. You fight, they lost it. That's what I'm here, is whatever I do in Friday, in here, and then I do just get it out. It's like when we say like mostly it's not just the highest, it's the optimist. In other words, like we want to do you know, we want to be embarrassed. So if you have a hospital, you treat this even if it's a nice group, nursing hospital, all of those, there's no doctor, there's no nurse. There's no way to bring the people into the nursery and actually work with them, be volunteer with them. Even if it's like in basketball, or football, or people, you just did we just had it first. And we have real fast, very fast. So sister does a lot of all sisters, you know, it was only two. And that was the one. You know, we pick the boys who play soccer and football and hiking. So like this these youth and social and that's why we get around to being out. I mean, like I saw a story that we had this basketball game. I was one of the that's exactly you want that. So you know, he would just play and then he was really or something like there's a third that like they didn't like and then when the time came, and so he was sitting around. And so he just kept playing before you know it. You know, and then they would like go one more time, so they would set them fast, like they would play like almost like right before the time. So he would like, you know, start passing. And then little by little, inch by inch, by near software environment gets to the
Bye. Bye.
Well, I guess the house is staying there. It's always called anyway. Community and parents and the slash. So, and all my friends are doing them. I don't mind all of them. And I think a lot of but he don't, a lot of times doesn't just say the believer, you know, people got. That's what the whole key line. It's lots of, you know, all this. Well, we're gonna go. The whole problem is in the something. Why is it needed something? If they say, for example, they try to say, if God is almighty, and not just good. Why is it all? If he's almighty, why is it God? It'll say that's the conclusion is there's no God. And he's not almighty, and there's no God because look at all the evil and injustice. All the stuff. Infant, why not both things, have cancer for something. That's why I have it. That's why I wanted to this time and I know it's the issue. I actually know that this is one of this very important. So I like I don't think I got on but I don't get one. Oh, good. He's like one role model. I think that was another thing that answered your question. A lot of times parents don't like. So like I remember someone was like, hey, you gotta help my child. They're not praying, they're not fasting, they're even taking Islam, they're on the verge of leaving the religion. You gotta do something. Because everything could have the best. Right. So I said, how old? And it's usually this age, when I get the phone call, or when I get the concern parent, it's usually this age, 17 now. Why 17? Because they know they're about 18 and they do whatever they want. And their parents can't do anything about it. But they always get concerned to make them 17 and a half. It's like, if they were praying for 17 years of their life, and they weren't fasting, and they weren't doing halal, what makes you think that overnight I can fix that? I don't have a magic wand punch where that's boom, your child is fixed. Yeah. By the way, your child, like a lot of times they don't even want to speak to them. Like the parents want me to speak to them, but the kids don't. So sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But my point is like, you can't wait, until 16, 17, decide that now you want to teach your child. Now it's got to start. Now it's
Yeah, there's always hope. I mean, like I said, I didn't go over to fire and I learned later, but there's always hope that somebody can and will, and a lot of guys will, but. You know, that this, the oil out, they say it's like a baking liquid. When you have the dough between your hands, you can mold it faster how you want. But once you put it in the oven, you bake it. You can't change it that much time. And they say like, it's like a tree, you know, like you have a tree. And sometimes you seed it, you water it, maybe some natural fertilizer. Sometimes you got that stick. Make sure it goes straight up. Right? Sometimes a little bit of this, you know, so that's how you have that tree grow upright strong. So when it gets older, it's firm, then it's fixed. But if you just neglect it, and then it's too late. Right? So, you know, a lot of this starts very early. First of all, it starts with us, and then it starts early on. And part of the spiritual way begins early on. And the longer we wait, the harder it becomes. And if we think we can pull that tree back or we'll mix that cake up, make it how we want, on their 16, 17, 18, it has to happen before the little thing. Before they receive, not when they receive, before they receive. Let's get see you. Thanks,
It is one can go and have to learn more.
Yeah, I mean,
Honestly, there is too much information. It makes confusing.
yeah, I was gonna say that, it makes sense every year. Every year, it's just get one. There's a lot of this actually in house. Throughout the whole school year.
Yeah.
Some days, day one, 10, 11, and 12. I teach it every year, we teach it for years, and we have, it's in-person class, okay, but there is an online version, option for those who are on state. So if you're not able to come physically to class, then you can still register for the class and get the Zoom and learn online because you have the excuse of not doing. So that's something, of course, right now, we're like about to end the mission quarter, then the spring quarter, after the month. Still good to take. I mean,
It's never too late.
never too, you can, I mean, it's gonna be like, you're gonna be joining, like, you know, you can still join a benefit, it's just gonna be built on the master. So some of it might be abstract. We may not understand everything because it's all kind of building. But it's still beneficial, and in spring quarter, we get into, spring quarter is unique. We get into, the unseen, the end of times, what happens in the aftermath, what happens in we get in contact. Yeah, so once a week, every Sunday, so we teach the stuff, so you go to hub.com, you'll see the flyer. And we teach Ahida, and we teach Islamic history. And we have like the odds and we have Tezkia, we have Arabic,
And you guys not about the
we record, you know, for registered students, we record and then we can give them the recording, depending on the class. Some of it is just audio, some of it is visual. Not for the one-on-ones. So the one-on-ones are the 201. So one-on-one is why can't you do that? I mean, we try to say 14 and up, but the atmosphere, we have how to actually we make it set all like I'm sure because their parents will bring the child. So the parents will bring the two guys. Yeah, you'll see a bunch of flyers, like, so all of that's what we do. We teach sort of like, yeah, and then good job, exactly like that. But I call it yeah, I think it's better than yeah, a lot more so so that's some hamburger, something like that. So yeah, it's good. I'm gonna burger, egg, and wild bacon. That's happened. Is he? I think I'll go back and I had the chicken. But I think what we could ask the team, some of the space. Yeah, I can double check. We use some things that. I think I can ask. He did his. But it's the only place we can discuss it. So we find. Certified, they have. It has to be like in balance. And you certified and that first student to make you walk instead in their, these certificate, but even those who provide the service, they have their in their contract. That's me too. I try to go. What's your problem? You have your own. Yeah. Let's talk about the sound actually the first day. Oh, yeah, so I mean, it's hard because like in UK, that's everybody knows those guys, and that's pretty consistent, and it's a really like legitimate, well trusted, well known. Even they're not Muslim restaurants have it because they want to make money in this area, right? So yeah, you wish you have something like that in America, where it's one standard, everybody has some trust. They would probably organizations, people disagree about what is the mission, what method you follow, or if you follow method at all. So it's like you don't find the same kind of like standard as you find in. I personally know some of the brothers I have to, so I trust them. Yeah, and I know the brothers, I just don't know. I know what they go by, I know it's strict. There's some that don't follow that. So I'm talking about that. It's like they don't follow that. What are the basic very next phase? It's like that's certified there. I think it's always good to see people. Oh, yeah. You really do the house, sort of, and glad that people came. It's like there was a lot of brothers, a lot of people there. Some good questions. People asked, really like important, like so I'm glad they asked, I'm glad they were answering. People need to learn. Oh, they're out here. This is just a basic. But people need to learn their Aqidah, and also they need to learn about and even their daily lessons. And then you got to spend the basic Thomas and cultural community. You need to know this whole agency. It's a big one. Big one. Yeah, that's very it's not like a lot of screen words that give them it's not I think it's not like that. Oh, so they want you to come late. So what they want to do is more of a workshop or something like a longer, if possible. Like a Saturday or something like that. Yeah, Saturday is good day. Saturday whole day. Yeah, maybe and we're in there. Maybe parents or maybe you should. So there's just kind of speak for each other in the future. I do this part, I go around, I do about it too, football to faith. It's like a 2 hour, like a football. Yeah, like football to faith and transition, the whole story. Of why I went from football to
Okay.
yeah, so like this whole, the whole transition thing,
That would be very,
you know, it's you choose sometimes in 3 hours.
okay.
There's a lot of lessons in there. It's my story, you know, like there's a lot of, you know, ayat and there's a lot of stories within the story.
That would be very.
That's the point, it's really for you.
Yeah,
You know, it's not like, oh, why would you leave potential NFL
Yeah.
contract to go?
Funny.
to the other end? It's not the end. And nobody knows. So that's an idea, just to kind of see about, you know, if you have a youth program or communities, you know, you can do something like that. Also, like, I was telling some brothers that, you know, we did some good, we finished most of it, we did a lot of good things in the data, but I didn't finish everything. You know, like,
I know this is complicated, but
it's so big, I mean, like, you know, somebody ever thought that I would say, what kind of more, that's actually a teacher. You gotta,
that's okay.
Well, may not be shown, I didn't do it, so that people can just study it.
and then like.
But nothing like the live class, right? I know, it exists, but.
And then, there was the whole, all of the evil stuff.
Mm,
Why does it happen? I didn't get to that part because we were tired.
Yeah.
I thought so too. I mean, there was a lot of brothers, there was a good amount of sisters.
Yeah.
And I thought people were mostly attentive. I mean, you know, it's over like 10 plus.
Yeah, actually, we don't like, we don't have this kind of topic, we don't have a lot of imams who can talk about this kind of topic, right? And that's why, so you are kind of unique in that sense, and so you're here coming in and then starting that thing, and people are really interested. And
It's
yeah,
very good.
we get the survey and all that kind of thing there. I'm good with that. And everybody is the same concern, they get, you know, all of them have issues, right? I'm good with that.
That's a big real issue that all our communities face.
Yeah.
You know, Seattle faces it, you're facing it, Marquez, everybody, so.
Big time.
It has to be addressed head on. I really felt that's important. Yeah. You know, there's a lot, I mean, we can talk about a lot of things, so many things, but.
Yeah.
You know, this is some of the threats coming in our community, there's are really affecting the kids, and like, that really affecting. And so, like, whatever's happening in Seattle right now is trickling down here. It's a matter of time before everything we're facing,
Yeah.
you guys will be facing the same.
I think we're already facing.
Yeah.
It's a matter of, you know, it's like.
Yeah, right. And this kind of stuff I've been saying for years, over and over and over, so.
Yeah.
You know, it's an important thing to discuss, and, you know, like I said, whether we finish this, do more Al-Qaeda, do the football of faith.
Yeah.
Or some just like more youth specific thing,
Yeah.
or even like, sometimes I go just to play like football or whatever.
Yeah.
with the kids, you know.
Yeah, actually, our colleagues were saying, you know, that you were, you know, you actually have a plan for both kind of thing. And I was like, you wanted to going to do that. He didn't plan it. It's like in the late game, he was reading background. I was suggesting it. And he said, oh, yeah, what am I doing? You're doing now.
It's time to try. I had the food all the way to the East Coast. And they said, you know, our main event, you know, is on this field and there's a big all these people. I was like, all right, so the main event that I came all the way from West Coast to East Coast, it was a football game.
Oh,
Yeah, I was like, and we had a barbecue, they had MSA, and they had all this, and they said, we want you to play football. Yeah, I remember the kids, I'm like, okay. Well, I'm gonna football star. It was other program. Whatever you guys want to do, it was just fun, spend time in football and there.
you know, something. This is ongoing program, yeah, you know, this one is there, you know, every first Friday of the month.
Okay, yeah, good. I would say keep this. Family night, the youth night, all that is super. It really goes. It really does. I've seen people just start with like just a few people and then build.
Yeah.
And if the community feels like they're connected,
They're connected.
you know, they have good companions, you can meet and greet,
Yeah.
and you know, you have food, you have talks, and you know, you have people. That's how you keep this heart alive, you know. So
And we were not able to do it last, you know, the COVID time and all that thing, you know, missed it. So now it's coming back.
and everybody's not like so like you talk about COVID, it's like
Exactly.
you know somebody choosing construction thing. Yeah, that's asking.
I also hope it.
I was like, yeah, I say that's one more time.
There are two things which I didn't do. One is the video, actually gone video. But this will came out, and that. And
It's maybe next time it's learning. I mean, it's
just put out the recording.
yeah, we could record it. I don't know if you have like a online community.
Yes.
Section, you
Yeah,
can
I see, YouTube, we usually try to say,
people at home can benefit.
yes, yes.
You know, so live stream.
Not the live section, the recording thing, actually, we very sorry. So. We'll do it next.
Oh, pictures of the video. Well, and then also, I'll send it out to myself.
Okay.
I'll put the link, I'll take the pictures and then put it to my social media platform.
Yeah.
People benefit, more people learn, why not?
If I somebody, I know somebody is taking.
Is that all thing? Privilege.
Oh,
And then also,
Thank you.
You also organized it, so you're.
Thank you for accepting our invitation and coming down. Good to see you.
Wait, okay, yeah.
It was in the venue industry, you know.
Like before we came back, so. Who we gonna meet? So I was good to know that you're here, you know, my whole school community,
Yeah.
you know, so I think, did somebody come to Bellevue and then like I talked to me after the talk from this community? Was it?
Is it the real?
But somebody came and said, oh, there's a community in California that might want you to come down and do the program.
Right.
And so I said, you know, contact Omar. But,
Okay. Yeah. I think you might have thought about that, I think. Yeah.
Well, very grateful for his.
So you are set up for tomorrow? You're.
Yeah.
We're so flexible and exactly. We'll decide after that.
Obviously, that's number one.
One more.
Yeah, check out and we'll see about the Auburn thing.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe a restaurant or two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe a bad match, so burger.
But much better is the good one. Lady. Yeah, I mean,
And I didn't know that on that, right? Like that, like, that's. Man, that sounds like a bad burger, not a smash burger, you know? And he's like, oh, it's like bad man, but it's not,
but much.
it's basically the same meaning.
The same thing. It's true. But much is a naughty or something like that.
This is like the buck last burger. Buck last burger.
Yeah, I think we probably need to do it correct. I think many people ask you whether they converted or something like that. I think your story, I think it's relevant. I think when you said that, right? Maybe your story, I think you could back.
Yeah, I was not supposed to, I had a type of conversion when I became Protestant. I wasn't always in Protestant. I didn't have much knowledge, still don't, but I wasn't like somebody that, you know, I was just kind of like an average American kid, playing football and just, you know what I mean? Like, you know, but I feel like you take those experiences again, you apply them.
You know, that would be very, very useful. We will,
Yeah.
as long as you can come from the board.
Yeah,
Someone much better.
someone more, summer's more available. What's going to do?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're like, wait, listen, Wayne.
Oh, yeah, you said we'll go fishing. I don't know where.
It's like the brother, I forgot his name. But we were like, let's go fishing trip. Yeah, we like to see a fishing trip. Oh, yeah, I'll take you. We'll go fishing. That's my name, fishing trip.
It's a why actually there are a lot of the trips that they go and 30 miles into the ocean. I got a very big, yeah. It's like mostly salmon, and then they also have the crabs and the rockfish and stuff like that. And yeah. So yeah, one day it's one thing, but you gotta go.
3-4 days, and yeah, people are getting one fishing day.
Inshallah.
Couple programs, some fishing, you know.
Yeah.
I'd be like, where's the shade? Supposed to be here. Fishing trip. Oh, I thought it was the whole time. Oh, again, is that clock?
Let me know if you need anything and you guys can do something. Any other input I can give you? Tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I was going over with Davies, the driver, GPS guy, so I guess we have any ideas of, where to go, And try to, I guess,
East to west or, no, that's it.
yeah, I think like you said, that Auburn makes sense, it's not too far, it's close, it seems like it's a thing, good place to see.
Yeah.
I like that's further than I think we thought, that's a trip there, that, you do have a flight.
And it could be really covered. It could be
Right.
all the ski, people go up there and they will go on top of it. So it could be, you have to allocate for 3-4 hours, 4 hours.
Yeah, that's risky with the flight, yeah, so, probably better not take that far. But, check out something.
Yeah.
We'll be good and ready to go. I also. Sunday morning teaching again a lot, so.
Oh, then you have to take rest.
Yeah, it's a rest, and Saturday night we fly in.
Like it's evening, right? Yeah.
I
had to be another long night, so. Good luck,
love you. Thank you for everything. Well, bless the word you. Well, bless you, word your community, so. How this works is all the measure, that was done here, and all the blessings also look back on you 100%. And also on home too. So, and that, one who helps facilitate or guides the good of the one who does it. It's the idea of the problem homeless system. So if you help and you facilitate and you guide to good, even if it's through somebody else, then you get 100% of the reward, as well as that person, without taking away any of your reward or that person's. So it's like 100%, so that we're sincere.
All the good ones.
So 300%, it's all there. Everybody gets 100%. I do. So I'm in. That's how you do it. It's beautiful. It's like you do all these things, even if you don't do them, because you help organizing. Allow your work to be actually. Sure. This is my. Hey, how are you doing? What's your name? Zane. Zane. No baby? Like good or beautiful. Name. Beauty. Your Zane is beautiful. Okay. Now I know you. Yes, I will.
Yeah. 1 minute. And then we put this speaker. Yeah. Give me 1 second for me. Yeah. 1 minute.
In that office.
Where did you put it?
Hmm.
Where did you put it?
Hmm.
Did you sleep in the Did you sleep?
Where are we going? We're the last one.
Yeah, 1 minute.